You think death ends the secrets? It doesn't. It just makes them harder to explain. People keep telling me my husband was a good man, that I was lucky to have him, that grief is just love with nowhere to go. And every time someone says it, I smile politely and say, "Thank you," because it's easier than admitting the truth. I don't even know who I buried. My name's Rachel, and I've been a widow for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of casseroles I didn't ask for. 3 weeks of, "How are you holding up?" from people who don't actually want to know the answer. 3 weeks of pretending I'm fine when I can barely sleep in the bed we shared for 20 years. But nothing. Not the funeral, not the flowers, not the sympathy cards stacked on my kitchen table prepared me for the lawyer's office. I went there because grief has rules. You sign the papers, you listen to the professionals in suits, you make the decisions, you don't ask questions. I thought I was just checking another box. The lawyer opened the will, voice calm and steady, reading through assets I already knew by heart, the savings, the accounts, the insurance policies. Then he said it, so casually it barely registered at first. "The family home shall be transferred to Elena Martinez." Elena, our nanny. I blinked, waiting for the correction that never came. It had to be a clerical mistake. Maybe he mixed up names. Maybe he meant me. But then he pushed the paper across the table. My husband's signature, my husband's will, her name. And just like that, every memory of our marriage went quiet. Because death hadn't ended the secrets, it had just handed me one I couldn't ask him to explain. When people ask how we met, I always say college, but the truth is more specific than that. It was midterms week, and I was crying over a broken printer. He offered to help, fixed it in 2 minutes, and smiled like it was no big deal. That was him in a nutshell. Calm, steady, dependable. The kind of man who could make chaos look organized just by walking into a room. We built a life the old-fashioned way. Marriage at 26, our first apartment with secondhand furniture and dreams that felt too big for the space. 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who became our world. We didn't have money for luxury, but we had laughter, routines, stability. He worked in finance, I worked part-time at the local school, and we met somewhere in the middle, in the cracks between school drop-offs, dinners, and bedtime stories. He was the provider. I was the glue. That's how we liked it. When my mom got sick 5 years ago, I had to go back to work full-time, and that's when we found Elena. Early 30s, warm smile, soft accent, the kind of person who makes everyone around her feel safe. She'd come with glowing references and a quiet confidence that made me trust her instantly. Within weeks, she'd become part of the rhythm of our home, helping with homework, packing lunches, humming while she folded laundry. It's strange to say this now, but I loved her. Genuinely. She was like the little sister I never had. Dependable, funny, kind. When I had to travel to help my mom through chemo, Elena stayed late without being asked. When my husband's father passed, she managed the house, the kids, everything. She never asked for extra pay, never complained. She just showed up. She came to birthdays, holidays, even our family Christmas photos. We used to joke that she was part of the family, and I meant it when I said it. There were moments, though, small ones, that flickered strange in hindsight. My husband always praised her, sometimes a little too much. We'd be lost without her, he'd say after every event she organized, every schedule she remembered. I'd tease him, "You love her more than me," and he'd laugh. Too hard, too long. I remember the way Elena blushed and looked down, and how I brushed it off, because what kind of wife questions loyalty that has never once been broken? Trust is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to be the thing that anchors you when life gets rough. And for 20 years, I believed in ours completely. I used to brag to my friends about how lucky we were to have her. I didn't realize just how lucky she really was. The lawyer must have seen the confusion on my face because his voice softened, careful, like I was a child being told bad news. "Yes, Mrs. Porter, it's legitimate. The property transfer clause is clear. The family home goes to Ms. Elena Martinez." I remember shaking my head, smiling in disbelief. "You mean me? You must. Maybe he mixed up the names." He slid the will across the desk again, tapping the signature with his pen. "It's very specific, I'm afraid." The room went quiet. The clock ticked too loud. My hands felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me. I forced a laugh that came out wrong. This has to be a typo, maybe a draft version. He wouldn't. But the lawyer didn't interrupt, didn't offer comfort, just folded his hands and let me come apart quietly in front of him. I stared at the date on the document. 6 months ago, right after we refinanced the house. He told me he was just updating the paperwork, that I didn't need to come in. I'd waved it off, busy with work, trusting him like I always did. Now the memories started to rearrange themselves, the times he'd insisted Elena stay late because the kids love her routine, the way he'd defended her when I'd once suggested maybe we could manage without full-time help. She's family, he'd said. She makes our life easier. Maybe that was true. Maybe this was his way of thanking her, of making sure she was taken care of after he was gone. He was always generous, thoughtful, maybe too much sometimes. Still, the thought stuck like a splinter. Why the house? Not money, not a trust. The house. The place where our babies learned to walk, where we spent Christmas mornings, where our life was built brick by brick. That night, I brought the will home and laid it on my bed. I read the sentence again and again, whispering the words like a prayer that might change if I said them softly enough. The family home shall be transferred to Elena Martinez. I told myself there had to be a reason, a good one, because anything else meant my whole marriage was a lie. Grief makes you do strange things. You tell yourself you're just getting organized, but really, you're looking for proof that your life still makes sense. 2 days after the will meeting, I sat on the floor of my husband's study surrounded by piles of papers, tax forms, mortgage statements, insurance binders. It was the kind of mess he'd have hated. He liked things tidy, labeled, precise. I was searching for something, anything, that could explain why his will looked the way it did. That's when I saw it. Elena's name, on the second page of our property insurance policy, listed neatly under authorized contacts. Not me. Not our accountant, her. I told myself it must have been a clerical thing. Maybe he'd needed a name to fill the box and used hers by accident. Except, my husband didn't make accidents. Not like that. I dug deeper, scrolling through his old emails, invoices, anything connected to the house. That's where I found a few bank transfers. Small but regular, made out to her. Each one labeled consulting. Consulting for what? She watched the kids. She didn't consult. The back of my neck went cold. Suddenly, every small, harmless moment started replaying in my head. Elena laughing in our kitchen while he poured her coffee, the way he'd brush past her to grab a plate. That split second, too close. The nights she stayed late, so the kids wouldn't notice I was gone. How had I not seen it? Rage flared, then guilt swallowed it. No, he wasn't that kind of man. They weren't that kind of people. Still, I called her, twice, straight to voicemail. That night, I dreamed I was walking through our house. The lights were off, rooms stripped bare. No furniture, no laughter, no trace of us. Just a single name carved into the mailbox outside. Elena Martinez. I woke up with my heart racing, hands gripping the sheets like I'd fallen from a height. The house was still mine, technically, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow it already belonged to her. He didn't just give her our house, he gave her a piece of me I didn't even know I'd lost. I couldn't stand the not knowing anymore. Every unanswered call, every sleepless night replaying half-finished conversations in my head, it was eating me alive. So I did something reckless. I drove to Elena's apartment. She opened the door looking exactly the same. Calm, put together, polite. Like the world hadn't just turned upside down for me. She even smiled when she saw me. Rachel, oh my God, I've been meaning to call. Why? I cut her off. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. Why did he leave you the house? Her smile faltered. Confusion flickered across her face, then guilt. What? Don't play dumb, Elena. I saw the will. You're listed as the sole beneficiary for the house. Why? For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. I didn't sit. Her hands trembled as she spoke. I didn't ask for it, Rachel. I didn't even know until you just said that. Don't lie to me, I snapped. I've seen the paperwork. It's signed. He did it intentionally. Why? Her eyes filled with tears before she could answer, and for a brief second I wanted to believe her, that she was as blindsided as I was. But then her voice broke. soft and guilty. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "When your mother got sick, he was broken. You were gone so much, and he didn't want to burden you. I was there. He needed someone to talk to." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You slept with him?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "It wasn't about love. It was grief. Loneliness. It was a mistake." A mistake. I could feel the room closing in, the air thick with betrayal. Every memory of her in my kitchen, her laughter echoing down my hallway, turned poisonous. But then she said something that froze me completely. "He told me he wanted to make sure I'd always have a home," she said quietly, "because he couldn't promise he'd live with the guilt forever." That was it. The explanation I'd been searching for, and the one I never wanted. He wasn't just leaving me behind. He was leaving her something to make up for what they'd done. I don't even remember deciding to look around her apartment. My body just moved on its own, restless, scanning for something to focus on that wasn't her face or her tears. The place was small, tidy, a single mother's home, toys stacked in baskets, laundry folded on the couch. On the mantel, a few framed photos sat in a neat line. My eyes landed on one without meaning to. Elena and her little boy. I'd seen him before, a handful of times when she first started working for us. Back then, I thought he was adorable. Dark hair, bright blue eyes, that same half smile my husband had when he was trying not to laugh. And that's when it hit me. The same eyes, the same smile. I took a step closer. My breath caught in my throat. The resemblance was impossible to unsee. Elena must have noticed where I was looking because her face went pale. "Rachel," she whispered, voice trembling. My mouth went dry. "He's his, isn't he?" She didn't answer. Not really. Just pressed a hand to her face, shaking her head as if denial could still change anything. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "He didn't want to hurt you." The room tilted. Everything went silent. I turned toward the door before I could fall apart in front of her. He hadn't left Ellen of the house out of guilt. He'd left it to them. It wasn't charity. It was inheritance. After that day, I stopped answering the phone. Friends, neighbors, even my own mother. Their voices all blurred together into the same meaningless hum of sympathy and advice. You need to move on. He made a mistake. He was grieving. But betrayal doesn't die with the person who caused it. It lingers. In the silence, in the photographs, in the spaces where trust used to live. The kids know something's wrong. They see me flinch when they mention their father, but I can't tell them. How do you say your dad wasn't who you thought he was without breaking what little innocence they have left? I wander through the house like it's a museum of someone else's life. His scent is still in the closet, his handwriting on sticky notes by the fridge. He left her the house, but he left me the ghosts that still live in it. In the end, I didn't fight the will. There were lawyers who said I could, that the court might overturn it, that I had a case, but I didn't have the strength for another battle. I'd already lost the only one that mattered. A month later, I packed what was mine, the kids' drawings, a few books, the photo albums, and left the rest. On the kitchen counter, I set the house keys down and whispered, "It doesn't belong to me anymore. I found a small apartment a few miles away. It's nothing like our old home, but it's quiet. Safe." I hung one photo on the wall, the three of us smiling before everything fell apart. He built that house. I built our life. Turns out they weren't the same thing. Some goodbyes happened after the funeral,